guess what you can do with that promotion.
Colonel Dax! You will apologize at once, or I shall be placed under arrest.
I apologize for not being entirely honest with you. I apologize for not revealing my true feelings. I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again.
Since the publication of the book 25 years ago, no one dared to make this movie. It was too shocking, too frank.
What sort of casualties do you anticipate, sir?
Say 5% killed by our own barrage. It's a very generous allowance. 10% more getting through no man's land, and 20% more getting through the wire. That leaves 65%, with the worst part of the job over. Let's say another 25% in actually taking the anthill. We're still left with a force more than adequate to hold it.
General, you're saying that more than half my men will be killed.
Aside from the inescapable fact that a good many of your men never left the trenches, there's the question of the troops' morale. Don't forget that.
The troops' morale, sir.
Certainly. These executions will be a perfect tonic for the entire division. There are few things more fundamentally encouraging and stimulating than seeing someone else die.
Where in heaven's name are they?
On the left.
Where on the left? 0+1 and they're still in the trenches. They're not advancing. Miserable cowards. They're not advancing. The barrage is getting away from them. They're still in the trenches. Captain Nichols.
Yes, sir?
Order the 75s to commence firing on our own positions.
Hello, welcome to Movie Numbers. My name is Bob Sham. Sorry.
Angela.
The sounds you hear may be dogs, and all month long it is glory and propaganda. That is war movies, movies adjacent to war, covering a variety of wars, even some into the future we've discussed. The Bug Wars earlier this month.
You forgot to let me introduce myself because there's like almost no women this month. So you forgot about me for a second.
Well, it's war. This is for the boys only.
Let's hear it for the boys.
'Cause every time he pulls me near, I just want to cheer. Let's hear it for the boys.
Except in Starship Troopers, there was women's there.
There was women's there.
It's just good to know when in the future when we're spreading fascism across planets that we let the ladies get in on the fascism too. We're in our last stretch. Including this one, we got about 4 more war movies to discuss. And then we'll hit up some Lars von Trier once again, which we're trying to get through the whole year, talking about a dozen von Trier movies. So the back end of summer is just going to look real depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is pretty fucking sad. An anti-war movie that takes place in France, among the French. Sometimes you look at these things and you think of it like it's power corrupt. But I don't like to think of it like that. Power is going to be corrupt. It is a system that works. It's just not meant to work for you oftentimes. So when we call it corruption, it's almost to imply that if you get within it, within the established system that is there, that you're going to somehow, through your personal passion, going to change the way all this is. It's not the case. It's often not the case. You would have to change the nature of it entirely.
That's the Michael J. Fox of it all.
The Michael J. Fox of it all?
In that one Vietnam movie,
Casualties of War?
He thought that everyone was going to be good and honest and loyal and was shocked when people weren't and when people didn't
care.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a Stanley Kubrick movie. Some big names this week, or at least the first 2 of the week. We're talking about the 1957 movie Paths of Glory, directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stanley Kubrick, Calder Willingham. Jim Thompson, yes, the classic noir writer Jim Thompson had a hand in this movie, and it's based upon a novel by Humphrey Cobb, starring Kirk Douglas, Ralph Meeker, Adolphe Menjou, George Macready, and more. I believe this is Stanley's first movie since The Killing, and I think he said it wasn't until he made The Killing that he felt like he was truly in a mature place as a director. And this movie is, as you can imagine, a stunning looking movie.
Yes.
And the shots, of course, it seems obvious that in a trench warfare movie that some cool long tracking shots of guys walking through the trenches that are sustained long tracking shots seems like a really cool and interesting idea. So Stanley utilized those camera tricks, cinematography by George Krause. It's just an extremely nice looking movie. But these men, they have an assignment. Tell us about that assignment.
These men have been asked to try to take the anthill. The anthill is very heavily guarded by the Germans. These men have been through the ringer. These guys have done a lot of successful battles. They've won a lot, but they have been out there for a long time, and their numbers are not as strong as they need to be, and their leader is told, we need you to take this anthill day after tomorrow. And at first he says, no, that's too much. That's too short of notice. This is a death mission. They're all going to die if you make us do this. And his boss says, what, you trying to say your guys can't do it? You can't do it? P.S. I wasn't even going to mention this, but you might be up for a new star, but don't let that make your decision for you. And then this man turns within seconds of being told he might be up for a promotion to saying, okay, yes, they can definitely do it. We're going to do it. I don't care. It's going to happen.
So yeah, Brigadier General Paul Moreau plays our star-hungry divisional commander here. And yes, so he's he knows it's a suicide mission, but he ain't got to be the one that runs over that hill. So he comes and sets the mission forth to the men, and commanding officer Colonel Dax is played by Kirk Douglas. He tells them, and of course the response is the same from him.
You know the condition of my men, sir. Oh, naturally, men, they're going to have to be killed. Possibly a lot of them. They absorb bullets and shrapnel. And by doing so, make it possible for others to get through. What support will we have? I have none to give you.
Like, it is a complete suicide mission. They even break down the percentages of what would happen.
5% killed by our own barrage. It's a very generous allowance. 10% more in getting through no man's land, and 20% more getting through the wire. That leaves 65%, with the worst part of the job over. Let's say another 25% in actually taking the anthill. We're still left with a force more than adequate to hold it.
And they understand that easily, just off the start, they hit over 60% of the regiment will fucking die.
They calculate it to where I believe the figure is 25% of the men will be remaining. And because they'll lose a certain percent in each phase of this attack. And then they're expected to hold the anthill the entire day until other folks get there to help them. It's so infuriating because he goes to visit them. He goes there when he's going to give the orders. And we get that gorgeous long tracking shot that you were talking about. And he's going through and he's saying hello to the different men along the way. They're saluting him. But for every 2 guys that appear good and in good health, you have a guy bleeding. You have a guy on a stretcher. He comes across this one guy who is out of his mind.
Have you got a wife?
A wife? Have I got a wife?
He's a bit shell-shocked. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. There is no such thing as shell-shock. Have you got a wife, soldier?
My wife? My wife? Yes, I have a wife. I'm never going to see her again. I'm going to be killed.
Get a grip on yourself. You're acting like a coward.
I am a coward, sir.
Snap out of it, soldier!
And one of the other men tries to tell him, sorry, sir, he's just shell-shocked. And he was like, there's no such thing as shell-shock.
Yeah, he kicks
This
him
guy's
out.
a pussy. Get him out of my regiment. he doesn't even logically look at the situation these guys are in because all he can see is the star he's going to get.
You have to kind of remind yourself that these guys are French. They sound like you played stickball with them in Brooklyn when you was a kid, but they are Frenchmen. Just keep that in mind.
It's so bizarre, and it took me out of it so many times because they'd randomly mention, oh, this cafe I used to go to in France. It's like, oh, right, you are French.
Yeah, old gay Paris.
Not a single one of them had a French accent.
No, I think there was a very mild one coming from Brillard, and I think George McCready as Moreau was maybe trying to. It's just kind of.
It wasn't enough to be obvious.
I think it's more like the transatlantic accent that you get in older movies. That becomes this weird catch-all because it sounds extremely familiar because it's just English, but it also sounds hody-toady enough to you can pretend that it represents something fancy from somewhere else.
Right.
But yeah, there is another fellow, I believe we're talking about, I believe this is the character who plays Corporal Paris.
Maurice Roget.
He runs out with some scouts to, scout the anthill and the German gun nests, and they have one guy has to go out ahead, and he gets so impatient. He's like, no, he's gone. Like, he's barely
He's
gone.
also drunk.
And he's drunk, too.
And he's supposed to be leading these two other men.
And the guy is barely gone, and he gets scared, like, we need to go. And then he just lobs a fucking grenade.
And fucking runs off.
And takes off. The other guy goes up, because they're scouts. They have to do this. And then he walks up and finds his buddy dead.
But they didn't scout shit.
No.
Because dude just killed the one guy. This guy finds his guy dead. By the time he gets back and confronts
Maurice Roget,
was writing in his report that both men had died on this mission. He just expected him to die. We don't know what they could have found if they had truly done a scout mission. There might have been something they would have found that would have clued them into the fact that it was going to be even worse than they calculated.
That's kind of a floating backstory throughout the whole movie. So it's time for them to start doing the mission. And it's great shots here of them coming out of the trenches and explosions. I love a war scene in a black and white era movie, especially when the camera's pulled back and you can see the full field and all the men moving around. And it's like that in Howard Hawks' Sergeant York as well. It looked really good there too. And it looks fucking fantastic here. I mean, yeah, we know that Stanley Kubrick kind of has some chops, and he's going to get some good cinematographers, and he's going to people are going to suffer to make sure that he can truly get the movie that he wants. But they go through and they just keep getting pinned down. And the way it just follows Kirk Douglas's character going over and over, and he's just holding this little pistol.
And he's out there with them.
Yeah.
He is on the front lines with his men.
And men are flopping, dying, getting killed like left and right. So they get to a point and they're not even at the German line.
They can't get past their own line.
And there's the other wave, the other regiments behind them can't even get out of the trench. It's suicide anyway. It's pointless. You could get literally your whole regiment killed doing this. So they have to make their way back. And then that's when the bureaucracy of commanding officer bullshit.
Again, this movie just made me mad all over the place, as it should. It's supposed to.
It's an
but
anti-war movie.
Room. Yeah,
and
it's great.
But it's also like an anti-military culture movie in a lot of ways as well.
Totally.
Because I think even people...
Military career culture.
Careerism, yes. And even if you've had military experience, there's still going to be a lot of animosity towards commanding officers amongst people within... within the ranking. So there's something to connect to, like an extreme version of how completely detrimental certain guys with egos with commanding positions in these types of situations can be.
And you get three very clear images of this. You get the Dax, who is the leader you want. He doesn't even really necessarily want to be there, but he's going to do right by his men. He wants to do what's necessary. He's the one that tells them, we're all getting killed, fucking go back. You get his boss, who is just a total narcissist, in this next scene, is so upset that they're not getting out of the trenches, doesn't care that they're dying, wants them to just keep going, whether they die or not. He thinks they're being cowards, and he orders his guys to bomb their own men.
General, the battery commander reports those are our own positions. He says it must be a mistake.
Confirm the order, Captain.
Yes, sir. There is no mistake. The order is confirmed.
Battery commander respectfully reports he cannot execute such an order unless it is in writing and signed by the general. Over.
General, battery commander respectfully reports he cannot execute such an order unless it is in writing and signed by the general.
Give me that phone.
And he gets on the phone himself and tells him a second time, do it. And he says, no, not unless I get it in writing. What happens if you die? I can't be responsible for this. Mm-hmm. And he tells him again, and he refuses. If he had taken that order, they would have all been dead.
Yeah.
And he was doing that to fucking save face. And then his boss is the one who is also backhanded, but puts on the face of, I care about you and I'm your friend.
Oh, you're talking about the Major General George Brulard.
Yes. He is the politician one. He is very, I'm going to do just enough to make it look good, but ultimately, it's fine.
He kind of plays even keeled when they get into the details of how these men are going to be punished for their so-called cowardice. And at first, it's like he needs 10 men from each regiment, and that would be 100 men. And so Dax is there being like, that is insane. And at first, Dax tries to volunteer himself. He's like, look, I'm the one commanding the field. If you should punish anyone,
put me on trial.
And they're like, you're a commanding officer. No, that's too much to have any commanding officer take one for some grunts. But yeah, they managed to negotiate it down to 3 people total, and these 3 regiments have to pick which men that they want to go
the captain of each regiment
for the firing squad. And the guy who was a fucking coward who ran off on his scouts after throwing a fucking grenade where his own men was scouting, he picks the guy that made it back that he assumed would die.
He also already had a grudge against that guy because they had gone to school together. And that guy did not respect him, and he knew it. But it's because that guy's known him forever and knows he's full of shit. And so he picked him thinking, well, if he's going to get killed and then he won't be my problem anymore.
So they have the trial, which is in some beautiful building in France somewhere.
Real quick, there's 3 men. That guy, the other guy, he gets picked by drawing a short straw. And I can't remember why the 3rd dopey guy gets picked, but there's no good reason.
And that dopey guy, the hangdog looking guy, they called him, I believe. He's showing some resolve when being questioned, but then by the end, he's going to get killed and he kind of falls apart. At the trial, Colonel Dax has nothing. They let him be the defensive representative of these men, but there's no stenographer for posterity. There's no character witnesses on their behalf, but there's no point in any of it because these men aren't being put up based upon their character. They just were randomly picked to represent what these men say is complete cowardice. Like, there is no point in there's nothing to defend because they did nothing but just exist in this regiment. So it's just a farce.
Yeah.
And you kind of want this to be a movie where there's some, dramatic courtroom scenario where these upper echelon douchebags get their comeuppance in some form. And it only happens very mildly. These men are sentenced to hang.
Dax's profession when he's not at war is a lawyer. He's a French lawyer. He's a good lawyer.
Yeah,
his speech is great.
We saw an Anatomy of a Fall what the French legal system looks like.
Yeah.
You can just stand up and say, "Nuh-uh." I need more French courtroom dramas after that movie.
He even tried, they wouldn't let him do the character witnesses, none of that. They wouldn't even let him list their past acts of heroism to prove that they actually weren't. Because like you said, they're figureheads. It doesn't matter whether they were cowards or not in that moment. They are meant to represent the entire regiment. And the whole idea is we gonna kill them because that will put everyone else in line.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, you're going to kill these guys, so next time you're sending me to certain death, I'm just going to run towards it because this is my other option. It's really stupid. They get sentenced to death. They get put in this cave. It looks like the walls are made of mud.
It's a military prison. We get some character studies of the prisoners.
Yes.
And, they put on a front and they're dealing with clergy guy who comes in and tries to save their souls. Some guys are more, well, this is, maybe we should do it like this. And other guys are very resistant. And everyone is justified in whatever feeling they have. And you do kind of feel for this priest because even when the guy's like yelling at him, he's not mad at this guy. It's just a complete bullshit show. And while Dax is doing his best behind the scenes, he can't do anything about it. He also gets word that one of the guys that threw the grenade, the coward guy,
Maurice Roget,
he did this. Dax goes up to that guy, the drunk guy who let his men die and grenaded him. He says, okay, you're going to be the one that's in charge of this execution.
First, you help the sergeant tie the men to the posts. And of course, you offer the men blindfolds, and, well, if they want them, you tie them on, see? Now, you take your position with the firing squad, you raise your sword, ready, aim, fire. Then you draw your revolver out, you walk forward and put a bullet through each man's head.
Sir, I request that I be excused from this duty.
Request denied.
Colonel, I beg
You've got the job. It's all yours. That's all, Lieutenant.
Colonel, if you could just...
That's all, Lieutenant.
And he's just a coward. Like, he's not evil. He's just a fucking coward, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to actively be shooting at anyone, even to save his own skin, but he is commanded to do this. If he's going to condemn this man, Colonel Dax is like, well, you're going to have the balls to shoot him yourself if you're going to do so.
When he laid out what happened, I didn't know that's how it was supposed to work. And they didn't show this last bit, but the way Dax explained it is, the men come out, they all get shot by 4 men each. The whole idea, obviously, is that you don't know exactly who killed who. It's like a shared guilt, I guess. And then the guy who's in charge is supposed to go through and pop each one in the head to make sure they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see him do that.
No.
But that's the part he's obviously the most upset about. And he has to go to each one and ask them if they want a blindfold, which he just doesn't want to get that close to them.
When they're getting posted up and the guy he condemned is walking up, he's like, I'm sorry.
Fuck you. Fuck him.
Right. Colonel Dax manages to let the Major General know a detail in that General Moreau was commanded to attack his own men. And of course, he gave that command in front of multiple witnesses, including the one that demanded to see it in writing. So the general puts that in his back pocket. And then when Moreau comes back around and Dax is trying one last effort in futility because these men do get executed, Brulard informs Moreau. He's like, yeah, I heard that you ordered to attack your own men. That's a pretty serious charge.
He tried to deny it.
I don't see how you could even ask me that.
You cannot imagine how glad I am to hear that, Paul. I'm certain that you'll come through it all right.
I'll come through what?
There'll have to be an inquiry.
An inquiry?
But it won't amount to much. Those things never do. The public forgets.
Public?
You've got to have the right to clear your name. You cannot allow such violent insinuations against your character to go undenied.
So that's it. You're making me the goat. The only completely innocent man in this whole affair.
So Moreau is like freaking out. And Brulard interprets that at the end when Moreau gets dragged off. He interprets that as Dax not trying to do something right, but trying to just take his position and get into a general command position.
Because he is assuming Dax is like him.
Like him.
Assumes that Dax is like the two of them, and he's not.
It's at that point after all this where Dax is essentially...
I may be many things, sir. But I'm not your boy.
Well, I certainly didn't mean to imply any biological relationship.
I'm not your boy in any sense.
You're trying to provoke me, Colonel?
Well, why should I want to do that?
Exactly. It would be a pity to lose your promotion before you get it. A promotion you have so very carefully planned for.
Fuck you, fuck all y'all, fuck everyone here.
Sir, would you like me to suggest what you can do with that promotion?
Colonel Dax! You will apologize at once or I shall be placed under arrest.
I apologize for not being entirely honest with you. I apologize for not revealing my true feelings.
Fuck France. Who eats frogs anyway? Except Southerners sometimes.
I apologize, sir, for not telling you sooner that you're a degenerate, sadistic old man. And you can go to hell before I apologize to you now or ever again.
Go eat your horses. Fuck all y'all, fuck this, fuck that, I'm out. He sulks off to where his regiment's going to be, and they're at a little pub. And then we see a lady who would go on, her name, Christiane Kubrick, credited as Susan Christian, but she would go on to marry our director, Stanley Kubrick, where they would be... One thing that is true about Stanley Kubrick, he was a true family man and very devoted to his family. And Christiane Kubrick, they drag this German woman out in front of all the French regiment, and she sings some song in German. And at first, everyone's just kind of hooting and hollering, like, yeah, we got this German lady. And then as everyone's just settling on the song, at first they're clowning the situation, and then they're just taking in this rare moment of genuine beauty.
Kein Ende mehr. Und als man ihm die Botschaft bracht, dass sein Herzliebchen im Sterben lag, da ließ all sein Hab und Gut und eilte seinem Herzliebchen zu.
Before they all have to go do some other suicide fucking mission the next day. And Dax is there to tell them to ship up and to go get ready, but he doesn't do it immediately. He walks away and he lets them have their moment there before the inevitable happens, which is probably, 75% of those men probably going to be dying.
Das war fürwahr ein treuer Husar, der liebt sein Mädchen ein ganzes Jahr. Es war einmal ein treuer Husar, der liebt sein Mädchen ein ganzes Jahr, ein ganzes Jahr.
This movie is almost a little too raw for movies of the time, but it's a great movie. A great anti-war movie. I might even, as much as I love Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, I do think it's a pretty great movie. I think if I had to pick a war movie of his, I'm actually going with this one, personally. We're going to give this 1 through 5 each, combined for best out of 10. What do you give Paths of Glory?
I think it's a 4.5.
I'm going to give it a 4.75.
Okay.
So that brings it up to S tier. We got a lot of S tier this month. Take a good long look at it. Soldier, Paths of Glory by Stanley Kubrick, rests between Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders and Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson from 2007. It's at least as good as those movies, if not better. Some solid.
Those are two of my favorite all-time movies.
Kirk Douglas's production company also had an assist with this movie. They came together under Brenna and Harris Kubrick Pictures. Paths of Glory, I liked it quite a bit. This is a beautiful and very depressing and futile movie.
Yeah.
But, and it's even realistic that the comeuppance just feels so mild. Like, even Moreau, you just have a feeling that he will be all right, even though he's got to go through the bureaucratic layers that he thinks he's above, even though he dishes it out to everyone else.
He's at least going to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be properly punished.
Check the show notes for links, other places to find us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we will be trucking along this Wednesday with another very highly regarded director and a movie that put him on the map.
Let's hear it for the boys.
Ach bitte Mutter, bring ein Licht, mein Liebchen stirbt, ich seh es nicht, das war